What's going on, Predators? It's Travis from Apex Predator Outdoors. Today we're going to be doing a follow-up video to the one that we did last week, but last week we talked about the IQ Define bow sight from Faraday Outdoors. Today we're going to be talking about the IQ Define Pro, the successor and big brother to the IQ Define. Thank you guys for checking out the videos, and thanks for growing this channel. We've had a huge surplus of incoming subscribers in the past week even, and so I thank you very much for all that, guys. Continue to subscribe and like if you like what you're seeing here, and without further ado, let's go ahead and get into the review. So the IQ Define was released in 2018 as the very first range-finding bow sight out there, the first one that had an attached rangefinder built into it. The IQ Define Pro came out in 2019 and was the successor to that. Some of the great things that this brought along with it was the much smaller, a lot faster rangefinder on here, so it's a lot more compact, makes the whole sight, even though it's got a larger opening here for the now 7 instead of 5 pins. It makes the sight overall a lot lighter, so that's a really good thing. The other thing that's really good too is that they brought their retina lock technology from their other IQ bow sights, and they put it on this sight here. That is a really huge thing for me, because one thing I suffer from a lot is target panic, and so trying to line up the peep to the housing and then line the pin to the, it's a lot of things, and my mind, a very analytical mind, and a lot of times I get lost in that thought process, and so I'm not focusing on squeezing the trigger, I'm not focusing on aiming properly. So with this, what this allowed me to do was it allowed me to go peepless. That's right, I took the peep sight completely off of my bow. So right now I'm running a peepless setup, and I'm using the retina lock system with the IQ Define bow sight in order to compensate for that. So if you don't know, the retina lock system has been used by archers such as John Dudley, and basically what it does is it allows you to see if you're torquing your bow. So whenever I come to a full draw here, if I see this retina is not lined up here, then I know that I'm inducing some kind of torque into my bow, and that my shot is not going to be where I want it to. Well, I thought, well, this is one of the biggest things I struggle with, is making sure I'm consistent from shot to shot, and this is going to help with that. One thing I am very confident in is my anchors. I know that I can find my anchors very quick and very easily, especially with the help of using a nose button. But this nose button has helped me a lot to consistently find an anchor and to make sure that I'm doing the right thing every time I draw back. What this really means that is by taking the peep sight out of the equation, it's one less thing I have to focus on. If I know that this anchor is going to be the same every time I draw this bow back, then I can get into where I can just shoot with the sight and not have to worry about that peep. This one thing I'm trying, I'll let you know how it goes, and I will be putting out a video about my experiences shooting peepless in a coming video. So let's talk a little bit about the sight itself. If you haven't seen a whole walkthrough about the IQ Define series, you start with the video. I'll put the link to it up here on the IQ Define bow sight. And all of the controls and everything on the side of this are identical to the IQ Define. But here's the differences between the two bow sights. All right, so we're comparing the two sights here. Okay, so we have the IQ Define, the original one right here, and then we have the IQ Define Pro over here. Okay, there's about a 1-year difference in release dates between these two bows here, or between these two sights. This one coming out in 2018, this one coming out in the first part of 2019. You can see the size difference here. The rangefinder is much smaller. It's like half the size on the IQ Define Pro, which is going to save you quite a bit of weight. They've changed the lenses a little bit. It's got smaller lenses that look like they're in the opposite orientation, so a lot better there. The laser looks almost identical. So yeah, the laser on there is almost identical. Hardware itself looks about the same, looks pretty unchanged. The rubberized grip is still there on the rangefinder itself,
so it's got a real nice grip to it. Still got the lighted pins button on the side. Okay. Housing size is significantly different because of those 2 extra pins. I'll just show you upside down, side to side here. So there you go. Yeah, you can see that the Define Pro has a much larger housing to incorporate the 2 extra pins that it's got there, and it also has to incorporate the new Retina lock system in here, and that's what helps you, really see if you're lined up on your shot and make sure you're not torquing your boat or anything like that. Okay. So also if you look at the plastic on top for the pins here, you can see that the IQ Define Pro right here has a much clearer plastic on it, so it's going to have better light transmission into the fibers of the pins. As far as the hardware and everything goes, it's about the same. Literally it is almost identical. Let me feel this knob here. So this knob is still very tight. It is much easier to turn than the IQ Define though. So again, I think this is like backwards or something, because they make it where you can crank it down really tight, but it's a lot easier to, or a little bit harder to release. So I'm going to try to 3D print a new knob to put on this, but we'll do that in a future episode here. So yeah, let's talk about the battery. So you remember the original battery on the IQ Define was the CR2 battery, I think is what it was. Harder to find. Let's see what it is on here. Yeah, it's an identical CR2 battery. It comes with this little stop on there. I'm just going to take this little piece off of here, and that will allow me to use the system. Okay. So took that off and put the battery back in. Down here we have the same port that you plug it in. The hand switch that comes with the IQ Define Pro is identical as well. It looks identical in length too. Might be just a hair shorter, but I think it's pretty much identical. So nothing has really changed there. So laser, same thing. Laser feels good. I'm looking at it just by looking kind of down the pipe here, and it looks like it's really well lined up compared to the other one. We will see whenever it's at a further distance, see if we have the same issues, but we'll check that into it when we get into it. The sight pins feel really nice. They're made out of it sounds like an aluminum, I think it's an aluminum pin, so they're going to be very durable. All the adjustments are the same. They've created a little bit of a better window here you can see the difference between the two of them here. It kind of seems like there's a little bit better window to adjust them out of. You got marks on both sides versus just on one side. So just some subtle differences. Between the two sides. Okay. So let's test some ranging. Let's see how it does. So there you can see that Retina lock system. You see that? That little glowing green thing there is what lets you know that you're in the right pitch and you're not torquing everything. That is adjustable right up here on top, and you can adjust it up and down. And then I think there's a left and right adjustment as well. I'll look for that in a minute. But the adjustments on there on top is what allows you to change that system so you can see and make sure you're not torquing anything. Okay, so let's go ahead and turn the rangefinder on. There it goes. Alright, so now it's ready to find the yardage. So I'll just push the button and now it starts looking. So let's see how it does. The battery dead on it. So 9 yards, okay. Find the laser. This is the hardest part about using these two sights, is finding where the position of the laser is, because like if it's daylight outside, that laser almost disappears. It's about right, it's about 20 yards right there to the car. About 4850 over there, so the ranging looks good. But the problem is unless you have it on something highly reflective, like you can see I'm shining it in the tail light of my Durango there, see how much it reflects. But if I go right next to it, you can't see it. It just disappears. And this is in the middle of the daylight. So this is the problem with these sights, is that they're relying on a red laser. I think if they'd switched it to a slightly more powerful green laser, I think they'd have much better results with people being able to see this. All the tools are included to mount it here. Okay, so that's good. These are the list of the ones it comes with. I prefer using these because I can get a little bit more torque with them. Alright, so next we're going to use these. These are the different nuts that lock it in. So they still use the flathead for the top and the non-flathead for the bottom. So socket cap on the bottom. So they got a little, I feel like the screws are a little bit longer this time, which was kind of a silent complaint that I had about the IQ Define, is the screws that came with it were a little bit too shallow. And what ended up happening, as you can see here, I actually stripped a layer, the first couple threads off of my bow, trying to get it to fit in there properly. So that's because it comes with these two washers that they want you to put on there. It's a crush washer and a flat washer. Let's see, these are, this one is a 1/8, top one is a 1/8. So I just mount it there. I'm going to pick this up so it won't torque anything. Put it just finger tight, a little bit more than finger tight. There we go, there's finger tight. Let's see, is this the same size? Nope. So it is a 1/8 for the top, and then it is a 5/32 for the bottom one. So I'm going to go ahead and start with, go ahead and put this on the top, or on the furthest out one, because that was the one that worked better for me with the regular Define. And so I'm going to start there. Start from your strong foot, right? That is nice and snug on there. It's tight. Okay, there we go. Now she's mounted.
So if you watched my other review of the IQ Define bow sight, which I'll tag in the description below, but if you haven't watched it, go check it out. So in that video, I was told you that basically once you get to the point to realize that this is going to be a little bit more difficult to set up than a regular bow sight, then you realize that past the rangefinder and past the fancy bells and whistles, it is just a bow sight. This right here is the same thing. As far as bow sights go, as far as 7-pin bow sights go, it's a really good one. Some people aren't going to want a 7-pin bow sight because they think it clouds up my reticle too much. There's just too much going on there, and that's fine. But I really encourage you to think about it and try it out. The reason, if you look, again, watch the last video, the reason I switched to this type of sight was because I got tired of having to set ranges and try to find these as I go. That's not a bad thing to be able to have a sliding sight. I just decided after 2 years of using a sliding sight, the Fast Eddy Pro or Fast Eddy XL, that wasn't for me. So anyways, a great sight. It's still got a great build quality, and so far I'm having no trouble with it. In fact, it's solving a lot of problems for me. So if you're looking for the IQ Define Pro, then I think it would be a great deal. Especially just like the IQ Define, you can get it for a steal of a deal on eBay right now. Normally this is a $500 bow sight or somewhere in that range. Right now you can pick it up for about $179, $199. So we're around $200 on eBay. Still brand new in the box.
So far the sight's given me no issues. Sighting it in has been just a breeze, just like it was with the other one. And this IQ Define Pro has been a lot better about some of the things like the setup with the laser. I had less issues with the laser. It took me about 5 minutes to get the laser set up. So all in all, it was a lot better process. I just had to adjust the grub screw on the bottom that held the laser up a little bit, and once it dropped the laser down into place, it's been great. Again, just like the IQ Define, I tested this out and there's been no issues with it so far. Shooting at a distance, I tested it out. I measured with GPS and tested it with the rangefinder here, and again, just like the IQ Define, it's very, very accurate, no issues there. And so again, just like the other one, it just makes a great sight. And with the added addition of the retina lock, it's just knocked it out of the park this time.
So anyways, guys, I want to just thank you for viewing this video again. And if you liked what you saw, click the like button, hit subscribe, and so we can bring you more of these kind of reviews. Thanks so much for tuning in, guys. And as always, keep defying the odds.